Today we're talking to Heidi Rickels, and what's really neat is we talked to Henrik a while back, and Henrik's in Malawi, and actually Henrik and Heidi and Jessica all work together. Now, Jessica's about 7,500 miles as the crow flies from me in New Zealand. It just so happens I'm also a midpoint between her and Henrik. He's about 7,500 miles from me. So I'm going to basically give the podium over to Heidi and let her tell us a little bit about herself and what she's doing today. So right now, it's your podium, Heidi.
Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Heidi Rickels, and I'm the co-founder of Freshwater Project International. We're doing water, sanitation, and hygiene projects in villages, at schools, and at health centers in Malawi, Africa, exclusively. Rob has mentioned our country director, Henrik Kunkiani. He lives in Lilongwe, Malawi, and runs all of our country programs on the ground. He's also a member of the E-Wash Club and was able to attend the WashReg Summit, the World Water Summit, when it was in South Korea. And then I was able to attend last year in Atlanta. And then we also have Jessica Murison as our program director. She's also a member of the E-Wash Club, as Rob suggested. So that's kind of an intro to me. I know Rob has more questions where I'll have to give my full history and how I became passionate about WASH. But currently I'm running the day-to-day programs for everything on this side of the water for Freshwater Project International.
Keep going.
Oh, you want my history? Everything, huh? So I got involved in water and sanitation, or I should say I got involved in international development, probably 15 years ago. I was working doing community relations and marketing, and did a number of different things in the corporate world related to that. Really found a passion for service, and decided that my heart really beat internationally, and I wanted to get my master's in international development. And so I went to the University of Denver. They have the Korbel School of International Studies, and I studied international development there, and interned for a while at an organization called Project Cure, which takes medical supplies and equipment from the United States and ships them to over 150 different countries around the world to hospitals and clinics directly. So I was an intern there while I was completing my studies, and then I was hired on as director of communications after I graduated, and was there for many years doing their marketing and communications and outreach efforts. As part of that, I was very involved in the international NGO community in Denver, various networking opportunities, led me to a gentleman named Steve Werner, who in the WASH world, all things lead back to Steve Werner. He was at the time the head of a WASH organization called Water for People, which is still here in Denver. And they were hosting a group of water professionals from developing countries in a 4-month fellowship, training fellowship here in Denver. And as part of that, each of the participants, there were 4 participants that year from various parts of the world, each had to pick a business skill set that they wanted to develop. And so I got a call from Steve Werner saying, Heidi, I have a gentleman from Malawi, Africa named Charles Banda, and Charles is very interested in learning more about marketing. He's got a local Malawian water organization doing great work, but he really wants to expand his efforts and his outreach, and he doesn't even know where to start. Can you mentor him every day for 4 months, and he can just shadow you and come to all of your meetings, and you can talk to him about marketing, maybe help him develop a marketing communications plan. And so I agreed and said, sure. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it ended up being really a lifelong friendship. And Charles really, although my official title was to mentor him, I always say that he was my life mentor. It was really opposite. I got so much more out of that experience, including the knowledge. Here I was working for an organization that was providing medical infrastructure, supplies and equipment, which are so important in many hospitals and clinics all over the developing world, including Africa. But what Charles taught me is, kind of the other side of the coin of healthcare, that many, if not the majority, 60 to 70%, depending on the country, of the people who are in these healthcare facilities, rural healthcare facilities, are there from preventable waterborne diseases. And that kind of blew my mind. It's the other side of the coin. And I thought, wow, if you can hit it from both aspects, you really have a chance at impacting the health of people in these situations in these countries. And so I stayed in touch with Henrik. He went back to Malawi after following me around my crazy driving and taking him to all kinds of different meetings and situations, and learning so much from him as well. We stayed in touch, and he would, email me occasionally of projects that he was doing. And it turns out in 2004, I left Project Cure to stay home with my firstborn son, and was kind of, itching for something to do on the side to stay involved. And Charles emailed me and said, I'm coming to the States. I've had a documentary film made about my work called Water First, Reaching the Millennium Development Goals. And we're going to be sharing this at the American Public Health Association conference in Philadelphia. And I said, oh, Philadelphia, that's where my in-laws are from. And by the way, what is this movie? It's about you, and it's a film on water, and I would love to hear about it. And he had said he'd love to make it out to Denver. So I said, put me in touch with whoever's organizing your trip, and we'll try to make arrangements. And so he put me in touch with a woman named Amy Hart, who was the filmmaker. She had set up the screening of this film and brought Charles over. Amy Hart and I got on the phone together. She was in New York City, and we just hit it off. We ended up organizing a 9-city screening tour for the film, including New York City and Philadelphia and Denver and Minneapolis and Chicago and Washington, D.C. We just kind of did it all over the phone and through email, and just really hit it off. And we were all able to meet up in Philadelphia together for the first time. And Amy and I really realized that we were kindred spirits and water sisters. We were both supporting Charles and his efforts as his friends separately. And so from that, a bond was kind of secured, and we really decided to up our game in how we supported him. And we supported for many years his efforts, just very grassroots. We would show the film. People would want to donate or contribute. We would gather the money. We would go through another US-based NGO for the tax benefits, and then we would wire it to Charles to do very small wash projects in Malawi. And I got more and more involved, Amy as well, and we decided to form our own 501c3 officially in 2012. And that was the beginning of Freshwater Project International. We've built from being very grassroots. Well, I guess I should say we're still fairly grassroots, but it's been quite the journey as we've grown, and I've learned so much. My background is not in engineering. I'm not a hydrogeologist. but I've learned there are so many technical aspects to it, and there are people who know those things. And so if we can build partnerships and gather people and resources together, we can have quite an impact in Malawi. So over the years, I've taken over more and more of the day-to-day activities, and now we have Henrik is our country director in Malawi doing all of our implementation, and we have a new operations director. Her name is Zoe Paciani, and she is really taking our programs to the next level. So we started very basic, just doing borehole repairs, affirmative hand pumps. We did a couple of new drills, but we would have to rent our equipment. And really it was the dream of Charles to own our own drill rig. And so in 2013, sadly, Charles suddenly passed away. He had just a very progressive cancer, and it was very sudden, and we were very saddened by that, but also very grateful that Henrik could kind of take the reins for us in Malawi and carry on Charles's vision. And so in 2015, I think, we were able to gather the funds and resources to be able to purchase our own drill rig and equipment, which is helping to cut down on cost of drilling by about 60%. Gives us a lot more control and flexibility. We don't have to be on somebody else's schedule and hire out privately. And we are also able to contract out to other NGOs and groups to have an income generating opportunity through the drill rig. So we've been able to leverage that a little bit, and we're trying to build that program as well. So that put us, there have been these stages along the way as we've developed. That kind of put us at a new level, a new stage, and we started being able to drill our own wells at villages and schools, and then this Wash and Health Center program that we're partnering with Engineers Without Borders is really looking at water systems at health centers and optimizing those systems. Sometimes there's repairs, sometimes there's replacing piping or pumps, and really trying to, from the ground up, build a holistic, sustainable system at some of the rural health centers in Malawi, which was my original kind of aha moment that got me into WASH. So
it sounds like you sort of walked into a program that Charles had already started, that you really rely on
yes.
his knowledge, his expertise, his assessment of the country at the time?
Yes, and like I said, my gift, my wheelhouse was trying to connect the two. So trying to communicate the stories and the need and the impact, and to try to garner resources here, and then really rely on him for the implementation and technical knowledge. So
it seemed like you were talking about Denver, but at the same time, I guess from what I'm hearing, you had this documentary showing, so you were kind of hitting various areas.
Right, and Amy Hart, my co-founder, she was living in New York City at the time. Now she lives in San Francisco, and so we've always been kind of national, I guess, so to speak, or really international in our constituencies. But in the past few years, when I've taken more of the reins, I've really tried to build from the ground up our office and our donor base and partnerships out of Denver, Colorado, where I'm based, and really out of Golden, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. So I'm in a co-working space here in Golden. It was original gold mining community. just right backing up to the Front Range mountains. And also, it might sound familiar because the original Coors Brewing Company was started here, and there's still a brewery here in Golden.
So you're in Denver now. Where's your outreach from? I mean, it seems like it's a lot broader than just the Denver, Colorado.
Well, we've kind of based it here in our hometown, Golden, and then the broader metro area of Denver. But we have outreach in many states. New York in particular, because of Amy's contacts there. And then now in California, where she's based. We have a board member who is based out of Atlanta, one of our engineers who's helping on the Engineers Without Borders team. He's out of Atlanta. And so we've been able to kind of slowly build some outreach in that way. But started in Denver, but we're not only here. And then also in country in Malawi, there's opportunities as people know more about our organization, the work that we're doing. We have people who reach out to us and say, hey, we're working in this particular village doing building projects, but what they really need is a water source. Can you help? Had other groups that are working doing education projects at schools, but same thing, they see a need in a community and they connect us. And so it's really international. And then Henrik went to Korea and met people from all over the world. And so we're hoping to have a really good group of us that goes to Toronto to the World Water Summit for WashRag, and then just reach out even more based on our Rotary network.
So it sounds like by default, from the location of both your officers as well as your board, that you touch at least 4 large metropolitan areas in the United States as far as your outreach locally. I mean, well, when I say locally, in the United States.
Right.
You go right. You go beyond Malawi? Do you go to other countries?
No, we decided early on, and this was really based on Charles is being from Malawi, but we've made a conscious effort not to be tempted to expand beyond that, and to really focus in just for impact reasons. And we say, there are other water organizations that have a different approach, and maybe they're working in different ways in several countries or many countries. We like to say, instead of a sprinkler, we're a hose, just focused in on Malawi. So that's been a very intentional decision on our part.
And it sounds like, in a way, you start with Charles' idea of what seems like borehole care, and you kind of incrementally evolve. You kind of move from there to beginning to do your own drilling and boreholes, to beginning to do aqueduct systems and things like that. So it seems that, from what I'm hearing from you, is that as you kind of got more and more involved, you kind of evolved in a way. And it sounds also that you got into education too. So it seems that you began to understand that, WASH projects are more than just the technical side. There's also other issues that make it a very complex problem, whether it's education or understanding, the health impacts or things like that.
Right. Well, WASH is, it's comprehensive. That's why we call it WASH and not just water. And it took me a while to really understand what that means, to have a holistic approach to WASH. And you have to start somewhere. And I think water is a great place to start. And we had to start, small even within that. But in 2016, through our friend Steve Werner, we were able to connect with a partnership that was already existing, that was between WashRag, which is the Water and Sanitation Rotarian Action Group, WashRag, Procter & Gamble, and another organization called H2O for Life out of Minneapolis that connects schools with, kind of does an adopt-a-school model. So that it connects schools in the United States, mostly out of the Minneapolis area where they're located, with schools in other countries. And so the partnership is funded 50% by Procter & Gamble and 25% by H2O for Life Schools. And then the other 25% is sponsored by WashRag, but really means that Heidi and Henrik and Jessica have to find local Rotary clubs to contribute to leverage that last 25%. So we did a pilot project at 5 schools in Malawi last year, and that included a new water point, an Afrodev hand pump, blocks of latrines, blocks of urinals for both boys and girls, latrines that had doors and locked, and then hand washing stations. And then the students, Procter & Gamble's kind of component is they have a product called P&G's Purifier of Water in a Packet. And they provide a supply of those packets through our program for students to take home and to pass on that information. Now, you mentioned education, and that's a huge important part of it. So we also have a hygiene training component for the teachers, students, and then last year we piloted a program put together by several of our graduate interns on menstrual hygiene management. So there's a tremendous issue in Malawi and many parts of the world where girls, when they reach the age of puberty, if they don't have a private, safe place to use the restroom, they're too embarrassed and they drop out of school and end up getting married or just never continuing with their education and having children at young ages and so forth. And so part of the comprehensive program is to provide them with latrine blocks with doors that shut, where they have privacy and safety, but also to educate them. In Malawi, it's very taboo to discuss menstruation, and often maybe an auntie might warn you, but you're certainly not taught anything about management or safety. And so you just kind of make do, and there are all kinds of health implications of that. And so we've put together a culturally sensitive curriculum that we're piloting that's train the trainers. So we teach the teachers, and then the teachers will then pass on the information to the students. And it's a holistic effort to try to continue to keep girls in particular in school, but also educate both girls and boys on health and hygiene.
Very, very nice. And what's really interesting too is you started mentioning partners, and you talked about Procter & Gamble and things like that. But you also mentioned the Rotary Club. Have you done any matching grants at all?
We are in the midst of a matching grant right now for our Washington Healthcare program. So I'm learning all kinds of things about the hoops that have to be jumped through. And the district where I live, not the district where our club is, because that's in New Zealand, but the district here is District 5450. And I have a lot of Rotary relationships here. There's a district wash committee that has just fantastic individuals on it. And so over the last few years, I've gotten to know them and form some relationships and work on some Rotary projects and cash grants. But this district grant this year is our first district grant, where you have to really figure out how you leverage the match and all of the check boxes that have to be checked off. So I'm still in the midst of pulling that together with the help of some great local Rotarians. So
that was a loaded question on my side. I can't help but smile, because I think one of the things we've been talking about is, what the value is of the e-club. That we really are a point of information for the Rotarians. But one side is obviously the technical side and things like that, or contacts in country and how you develop partnerships and things like that. But on my side too is one of the biggest forms of inertia for clubs is going through the matching grant process. I think the idea from my side is if we can have that knowledge base, and not only the knowledge of how to get grants together or put them together and kind of administer them for the whole life cycle of the grant, but also those contacts in Evanston, in Chicago.
Yeah.
We, by just a general nature, to say we can help you X club, get a matching grant together and do that. So in a way, I kind of trapped you, Heidi, and say, "Oh, I've done matching grants." Well, good.
Well, and I'll say I've done matching grants in this district, and I do get asked. I have been asked, "Well, why aren't you going to the E Club?" And my answer is, well, I'm a member of the E Club. They're just, we're getting up and running and looking at that, but that we're out of New Zealand, and I have very few contacts or knowledge of how their district works. That said, I have learned how this district works, and I know that there are some similarities, but it really takes those on the ground relationships. So I think our members who are there in New Zealand, we can all kind of merge our minds together in how to best do that. But where it really works best is going in person, showing pictures, presenting, whatever project you're trying to get funding for, and answering those questions in person. And that's what develops the relationship. And so it's a little bit of a disadvantage to try to Skype in or to try to, just present something via email. That's where, even Henrik, when he came back from Korea, had some international clubs with interest, that he had met someone from that club in particular. And then I reached out, presented a project, and they wrote back, they just didn't have any buy-in. Their International Service Committee or World Service Committee, they're kind of like, well, that's interesting, but that's,
I think the idea of being able to provide the knowledge base to actually put both district and matching grants together, because if you really know the grant process in both at the district level as well as the international level, you really kind of grow your funds.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of Rotary. I got off the phone earlier with a gentleman from the Golden Rotary. He's doing a wash project in Nicaragua, and I was calling him to see if we could gather some extra funds for our program, and told him we were partnering with another club in the district, and he said, "Oh, well, I wanted to go to them to get funding for mine, so you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. We'll leverage it." And that's how it works. And it ends up he's doing a global grant, and he's one of the partners that they funded was a local business here who agreed to match any cash donations from the club 50-50, and then they're able to take that to the district and have the district funds matched up to a certain amount. And then I guess our district, the District 5450, has a 1-to-5 match now on global grants because they have an excess of funding for global grants. And so, all of a sudden a project that they contributed maybe $2,000, $3,000 to is $60,000.
Yes.
That's the beauty of Rotary.
So. And that's the thing. I think if we have individuals in our club in the E-Wash that understand that process and really how you can grow it, you have to go back to. So I think you might know through about the PowerPoint presentation with Nancy.
Yes.
So there's one thing about putting the PowerPoint presentation together, but then it leads into what can this club do, and rather than saying, okay, here's an idea for wash or pro wash and all that stuff. Now it's here's about the issues about water and sanitation projects internationally.
Right.
Here are potential host clubs or locations you can go to. And oh, by the way, we can help you administer that grant, help you develop funds. We know pretty much what you can and what you can't get a matching grant for. But at the same time, we know how to grow funds from a district level to a global level with Rotary International. And I think that kind of resource to the club gets over the inertia that clubs have, because a lot of club members, they're in the community, they don't really fully appreciate international projects, and they get scared of grants for the most part.
Yeah.
It's a lot of administration. So
it is a lot of administration. It's a lot of perseverance and persistence. And I think one of the struggles of Rotary is the changeover. You know, you have a different president every year. You have a different maybe international service committee chair every year. And so if that knowledge transfer is not made, if you have a service committee chair who knows the process, they move on to other things and don't pass that information down, and you know, then it can be feel pretty overwhelming to think about how to do something in a country thousands of miles away that you have very little control over, and then to look at what can seem daunting in an application process. So,
no, it's been really exciting to talk to you about this. I think it's really, for me, it was fascinating to see how you made connections to Henrik, obviously because he's a member of the club and all that stuff, and seeing how that goes. Also, the evolution of the program and how it begins to grow as you develop the vision, if you will. Even as far as, you know, having Charles unfortunately pass away, but at least you begin to see that you keep going, right? Because you have the methodology to keep going, all that stuff, and the knowledge base about how to use both private partners as well as Rotary and things like that. So for me, this is really exciting. I think that's a great way of kind of wrapping this up. I sure appreciate you allowing the time to talk to us, and look forward to having you more involved in the club.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no worries.